And we're recording. This is the Kubernetes SIG Network meeting for Thursday, October 4th, 2018. I suggest we start with the Kubernetes 1.13 update, since we've got some SIG release folks here. And then we'll let them pop off if they'd like afterwards.
Sounds good. Thank you. So hi, everybody. I'm Aish. I wanted to meet you all, introduce myself. I am the 113 release lead. The release cycle for 113, if you haven't seen already on the Kubernetes dev channel, it kicked off this Monday, October 1st, and it's going through November, and the release date, the anticipated release, is set for December 3rd, the first week of December. So the main reason why I wanted to meeting with all the SIGs this week and next week is to highlight the fact that this is a super short release. We only have about 10 weeks worth of time to wrangle everything in. And currently code freeze is set to the 15th of November. Which kind of just gives us about a little more than 6 weeks to get all the coding and tests and documentation in for the freeze. Though we'll start our formal feature collection starting next Monday, that's October 8th, I just wanted to meet with you guys and request you to factor in the release time while planning your enhancement load for this release. While we are not formalizing it, we are aiming or attempting this to be more of a stability release. In the sense, our request is for you to try to land whatever might have differed in the previous releases, or focus more on some stability bug fixes, or increasing test coverage or test stability, as opposed to introducing something risky or large in the short time frame. So that's just something to think about while you plan your feature load. Any questions around that before we quickly just talk about two features that we see on the features report already?
No questions.
Cool. If not, Kendrick, do you want to talk about the two? Kendrick here is our enhancements lead. Do you want to talk about the two features that are currently there in the repo?
Hey, so Aish, I'm driving right now, so it's probably best that I don't look at it. So I'll let you take care of it. So I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Cool. So the two features that are right there, one is switching the default DNS to core DNS. This is something that was attempted in 112 but was deferred due to the out-of-memory issues that we're hitting. So I just wanted to get a sense of, is it still planned for 113? If so, what kind of pending work are you guys thinking about?
Are any of the core DNS folks on? I don't see any names.
Yep, this is Matt here. Yeah, yes, we're definitely planning on that being 113. We actually want to get that committed very early in the cycle. We've been looking at some changes that should bring the memory usage down below what the existing solution has.
Okay. Okay. Would it be possible to just update the feature issue with your level of confidence in what else is pending? That would be great.
Sure. No problem.
Thanks a lot. And the same for feature 563, which is adding V4, V6. I see that this is graduating to beta, planned to graduate to beta in 113. So again, the same request there. If you can get a sense of what's pending in terms of code or tests or docs, that would really help us make it.
So I thought, and maybe I'm misremembering, but I thought we had said we were not going to be able to do that in the 113 timeframe.
Okay.
Is that right, Dane?
This is Paul. I didn't quite hear what you said. Was it dual stack support you're talking about?
Yes.
No, not for 113.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so just to clarify, there's a beta status for the V6 only feature that is was put in 1.9 as alpha, and I think that beta for that has a chance for the 1.13 timeframe, but for the dual stack this 563, I really don't think there's any way we can get this done in 10 weeks time. Although we do want to keep this as a high priority in getting let's say half of it done, or a big chunk of it done in 1.13 time frame.
Okay. So what I could do is, as part of a tracking, we generally take the milestone out if it's not targeted for the next one.
Okay.
And yeah, you can go ahead and put a future milestone so that it's still tracked whenever you think it could go into beta. So for our purpose, I would just drop the 113 out of it for now.
Okay, and I guess it's understood that SIG Network is still going to have that workload for 1.13. It's still a priority, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I think progressing that is still very high priority for us. It's just that it won't be a release noted available feature in 1.13.
Understood. And the other feature that you were referring to, if you could put that on the repo by Monday or so, that'll be great for us.
I think we can do that.
That's all I had. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Thanks for chasing us on that. So we should do a quick review of the test dashboard as the first item. I can share my screen for folks to look at that very briefly. That should be the right one. Whoop. Can folks see that? Take that to mean yes.
Yep, looks good, Casey.
Cool. So nothing here is coming up as failing. I did notice in the last week or so this new set of tests has shown up, which I'm actually not familiar with. Is anybody on the call aware of these?
I think we are running some of the tests that no one else is running, so I probably need to look into that too. Maybe the test itself is failing. I mean, the test is not correct. Maybe.
Do you want to explain what that?
I haven't into it.
No, I'm saying not the SIG Network -netd. What is that?
Oh, okay. So basically, we are using CNI to replace Kubernetes for networking setup for on GCP. So we are planning to roll out some features for it's just for GKE, and we are using the open source to testing this feature. So it's probably only for GKE.
Cool. And we think, if I understood correctly, that we're running some tests that aren't being run elsewhere, and that's why we think they are failing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, maybe I need to disable this tool.
All right. So I think that's looking good. The next item on the agenda was from me about the SIG charter. So I put up a work in progress, just meant to be a straw man for the SIG Network charter. You can grab a link in the meeting notes, and I'll stick it in the chat in just a moment. Basically, I'm just asking for review and input, and we can hopefully help crowdsource this and get something really nice. So there's a link to the pull request that I've put up. Bowie, I'm seeing your circle have or your square have a green line around it, but I don't hear anything, so I'm not sure if it's a problem on my end or.
What?
Okay. Maybe it was just
We're not talking.
okay. Cool. Just wanted to make sure it was a Zoom UI issue and not something else. So I think that's all that needs to be said on that for this call. Please go and comment and make suggestions, and I will address all of that. So next on the list was node local DNS cache proposal. Ramesh, are you on the call?
Hi, that's me. I'm going to be sharing my screen here. 1 second. Okay. So yeah, I wanted to get some input on and share some work that we've been doing here at Google regarding running a node local DNS cache to help with some of the latency problems, some contract issues. So yeah, just some early results here and some design proposal. So yeah, I have a few slides. Start with what is it that we want to do. We want to start a node local DNS cache that runs on all the cluster nodes as a daemon set and serves DNS for all the pods that use cluster DNS today. Why do we want to do this? Hopefully we can improve latency by reducing cross-node communication for pods that have a lot of DNS queries, but kubedns instances turn out to be on a different node. We can help improve latency in that communication. We want to skip contract for the pod to the local DNS cache connection using IP tables that prevents filling up a contract from UDP DNS queries, and also hopefully alleviate some of the race conditions that have been reported in open source. Also, we have the option to now upgrade the cache to the kubedns connection to TCP, maybe get even more fancy in future. More visibility, more metrics, more information on what pods on a particular node are doing, since we have node local metrics now. We'll be able to re-enable net caching depending on what we run as a caching agent. We've not been able to do that with DNS mask. Hopefully that reduces a bunch of the queries at least that keep hitting NX domains. Lastly, there's also been significant interest in the community for a solution similar to this, a lot of open GitHub issues. So hopefully we can make it take off now. So yeah, that's the motivation for the feature. Some more details on how we plan to do this. We want to run the caching agent as an add-on. It runs as a daemon set in the kube system namespace. We want to make sure it's not evicted, so set the priority class. We want it to be in the host network mode to listen for packets, DNS requests. We create a dummy interface on the node, on the host, and we assign a service IP to that. So all the pods can now reach out to this service IP for DNS queries. We want this to be in the privileged security context, since we want those custom IP tables rules to skip contract, and also this dummy interface to be created. An init container might be an option if we don't want to periodically make sure the rules are present. Like I said before, we want to expose this as a service. The service doesn't have any endpoints, since the local agent is the only one using that service IP. We would need the following ports exposed: 53 for TCP and UDP DNS connections, and the metrics port, the default is like 8953. We need one port for metrics. Just a little bit more detail. Unless there are more questions on this, I can go on.
It might be worth talking a little more about the service IP with no endpoints thing.
Okay. So we started with trying to see if we can hard code an IP address and then get that populated in the podresolve.conf. But a better idea that we could pass on a service name to the kubelet, and which can determine the IP address assigned to the service. That way, even in case of conflicts with the static IP we assigned, we wouldn't we wouldn't fail. So we can pass on a service name to the kubelet as a flag, and kubelet determines that IP address and populates that into the pods resolver conf. And this service IP, like I said before, each node will have a dummy interface that listens on the service IP. So if pods reach out to that, the packets get there, and the cache agent listens on that interface as well.
Everybody follow that? Any questions on that? I'm only asking because this particular part of the proposal is pretty subtle. All right.
Okay.
How would you expect to do the configuration on the host? Would that just be all within the daemon set in the Go code?
Yeah. If you are doing it as an init container, we could have that to be a bash script that comes up just one time, sets up. But with this periodic check, we want it to be. We'll be adding a nanny process, just like DNS mask has a nanny. We'll have a nanny for a Go program for the DNS cache agent that sets up the rules. Since it's in host network mode, it has access to set up the interface and the rules.
Okay.
And also watch for config changes.
The only thing I can think of that would be different for this versus the previous mechanism is that we'd need to make sure that all the network plugins definitely were able to send traffic for this service IP out of the cluster network and onto the host.
That's a great point, Dan. I think that's we should make sure that we make that as a note. This technique, I think, as we develop it, we'll get feedback on it.
Yep.
You're right. There will be cases where this won't work. Probably.
I mean, I think for the most part, it probably will. Just something to keep in mind that it might, some network plugins might have expectations that this not necessarily violates, because that's the wrong word, but this kind of thing I think was fairly underspecified with respect to Kubernetes anyway. I can't recall having any kind of either written or unwritten rule that said that network plugins definitely need to be able to send service traffic from the cluster network to the host. But that said, we do have other similar rules where the host needs to be able to enter into the cluster network to do things. So maybe we're fine. Just something to keep in mind.
I think probably in practice this will work for most users,
right?
But
yep.
it doesn't.
I agree.
Doesn't thoroughly work. An interesting, we should consider options here if anybody has other ideas. Another one that we sort of toyed with that we didn't decide on, and I don't really remember why, but maybe we could revisit in light of that comment, was to just assign a link local address. Like make a dummy interface in the root namespace with a link local address and say for the first time ever that link local is expected to go through the root namespace, and you're configure DNS on that link local address and not use a service at all, right?
Right.
We've never taken a position on the meaning of link local addresses in Kubernetes. It might be something worth thinking about.
Yeah, what we do for OpenShift at least is for a lot of the systems we run DNS mask in the host namespace, and that's got some IP tables rules to make sure that you can't hit up the node for DNS from outside the node. But because we expect pod connectivity going out of the node, they're able to access the node's IP address, and so that's what gets populated into resolve.conf. So it's really close to this. I think the only real difference is the addition of the service IP to this particular proposal.
Yeah,
so it seems promising to me here.
Sorry, you say you run it in the root namespace, so presumably on basically all interfaces in the root namespace, right?
I believe so.
And then you go out of your way with IP tables rules or something to say don't allow traffic in from the outside?
Yeah, to like port 53 on the node, etc. Yeah, just to kind of lock that down, because it's really only meant to allow pods to hit up the local cache as opposed to going out.
Right. Yeah, I mean, that was the reason that we talked about doing this dummy interface too.
Yeah.
Right? So maybe there's a different answer to that.
Yeah, I'm not saying that this is the wrong way to do it. Just that yes, having a local caching agent is something that is good and seems to work fairly well, and there are obviously different ways to do it. And I think this one seems okay. So I say go for it and, see what problems crop up with respect to network plugins, if any, and see what happens. And one thing to do maybe is to explicitly specify what the expectations are. But, you were just talking about that. So as long as we're clear on that, I think that'll give network plugins a heads up on exactly what they need to do to support it.
Okay.
It's good to have options here too.
Definitely.
Just, like I said, the more subtle piece of the whole proposal.
Mm.
Okay.
Dan, do you guys do you run just DNS mask per node, or do you run a full DNS server per node?
We just run DNS mask as far as I know.
At some point in the past, you guys had some hacked up kube proxy that also served DNS. Is that gone now?
I am fairly sure it is. Hey, Dan Winship, do you have any further details here?
I don't know the details either.
All right.
Can you guys dig up somebody who does know the details to review this?
Scott Dodson, we can forward it on to him. He's done most of the work with DNS mask in the past.
That would be awesome.
So,
because honestly, if you guys have figured out a lot of this already, then like making it all work together is great.
Sure. Is there a link to like a KEP or something that I'm just not seeing, or are we basically what link should I send to Scott, or where should I direct Scott?
We'll have a KEP soon.
Yeah, I'll be submitting that KEP. I'll try to do that tomorrow.
Okay.
But the link to the slides are on the agenda also.
Yep. Yeah, I see those. Can you do me a favor? Just at S. Dodson on GitHub when you do the KEP, and he'll get a notification, and then I'll just send him a mail off parallel and see if he'll check it out that way.
Sounds great. Thank you. Okay, only a few more details here. Yeah, just some detail on the connections. So the local cache agents exposed as a service IP. The pod talks to the caching agent, and those connections are not tracked. We have IP tables rules to skip contract for those. And and any process adds the IP tables rules in the interface, and we have a check, uses the IP tables check command to make sure the rules are present periodically. Cache misses will still go to kubedns for cluster local queries, and the nodes upstream for all other queries. Those follow the regular DNAT. The kubedns queries follow the regular DNAT and connection tracking as before. And one diagram to just summarize whatever we talked on text. So that's the client pod. The green arrows are just the cache hits. It's the restraint to within the node. Cache misses go to whatever kubedns endpoint, like they usually do. And that's pretty much what I had. There's some of the choice of the caching agent. We did some early benchmark tests using the DNS perf, the perf test DNS repo in Kubernetes, and we tested the unbound DNS server as well as CoreDNS, and I just shared a subset of the results here. So for while setting a CPU limit, we found the QPS for unbound to be higher than what we got from CoreDNS. So based on that and the CPU requirements, current plan is to run unbound, but I did see that after the SO review, socket review support in CoreDNS, some of the results said the performance, the QPS has increased quite a bit. So I'll revisit that. But this is the plan based on the tests run so far. And yeah, based on those same results, the defaults for now, the CPU to set the request at 50 milliv CPU and the memory limit at 25 megs. But yeah, since I have the prototype I had did not include metrics, so the resource usage might change a little bit after we've added the metrics and the periodic IP tables check. So this is likely to change a little bit. So yeah, for metrics, Unbound provides an Unbound control program that queries Unbound. For metrics, you can choose from a variety of commands to issue to read the metrics, dump the cache, etc. CoreDNS has Prometheus plugins to do the same thing. Like I said, we haven't played with this too much, so the resource usage will we'll update it after I've done some more investigation. So the next steps from here, I wanted to get some feedback if this is the right way to go. I'm planning to submit a KEP. I have it in the drafts. I'll add some of the details in this slide here and put it out there end of the week. Implementation is in progress. This is a short quarter. We plan to get this in Q4. So yeah, that is pretty much all I had.
Awesome, thank you. Any more questions on that?
Yeah, thanks for the feedback. Just to add the folks in the KEP as well. Yeah, we'll submit the link to that in the agenda as well.
Cool. So I can't get to the agenda without minimizing, and it won't let me minimize. So perfect. Thank you. So next on the list was from Dane about the pluralizing API fields proposal.
Yeah, just want to thank Tim for getting the Google document out. It sounds like that discussion is winding down, and so I was just putting in a plug to get more eyes on the KEP if possible, especially in the endpoints API. So we're going to start coding that up pretty soon, and we just want to. There's some kind of a shortcut that I'm taking, and I just want to make sure that's okay.
Cool. It's at the very top of my mailbox with a big star next to it.
Yeah, thank you.
And lastly, we've got Dan talking about the working group spec.
Yeah, I'd posted a PR a while back that basically just puts a couple of versions of that V1 spec in the Cube community repo. I think we talked about this maybe about two and a half months ago. We just kind of wanted somewhere to live, and there were a couple of options for it to live somewhere, and we just decided to try the Kubernetes community first. So I was just kind of looking for some feedback on that. It's not that we want feedback on the spec itself, since this is the V1 spec that the working group kind of agreed on back in August, but just that feedback on, is this the right place to put it? If it is it okay to just merge it? Otherwise, if it's not the right place to put the spec, we can find somewhere else to do it. So that is all.
Hey, hi guys.
Hello.
Hi, my name is Pritesh. I wanted to put a thing in agenda. I'm not really sure. It's my first time here, so I'm not really sure what the rules are. Just I have a few things to discuss. People up for it.
Yeah, well, welcome, first of all. And before we get to that, I just wanted to make sure that nobody had comments for Dan, but then we'll have a time to chat through that.
Okay, sounds good. I'll wait.
Dan, I'm not sure if there's precedent for this.
Yeah, I don't specifically know of any. You know, it's just kind of if I'm fine to take any discussion or comments on that GitHub issue or the PR there that I linked to. I just wanted to bring it up and try to get a little bit more visibility since it seems like we haven't had that discussion for a while. So,
yeah. Okay, let's take feedback to the PR then.
All right, thanks.
All right, Pritesh. You've got the floor if you'd like to talk.
Yeah. Hi. So let me introduce myself. My name is Pritesh. I work in a company called Illumio in Sunnyvale. I have my colleagues Tom and Mukesh here with me as well. So some of our clients are facing some issues with Kubernetes. They were deploying few things and they saw that IP tables rules from kubeproxy and kubelet, they are being prepended. So they are seeing some issues from our products or some other product from the field as well. So I wanted to know if there is anything, any config which we can toggle to get it to append instead of prepend, especially the firewall rules. If there's no firewall policy controller behind it, Kubernetes still aggressively puts it ahead of everything. I think the timer is set for 10 minutes or something. So I wanted to know if there is anything to change the config. If not, we have a patch locally, and what's the procedure to submit it? Is it the right forum to discuss it? And all these questions here. So since I'm first time here, I would like to see what community thinks about it.
Sorry, just to be really clear, you want which rules to be appended instead of prepended?
All the rules?
In mainly the filter table rules, because they're like there's wide allow rules, especially in the filter forward in response to like the Docker filter forward default drop, where Kubernetes just kind of allows wide subnets open, at least from what I can tell. And so we want to have stricter IP tables rules before those. And the prepend, like the constant aggressive prepend, allows traffic that we don't want allowed.
I get the firewall one, although I forget, is it kubeproxy who's writing that rule to sort of bypass the Docker stuff? I thought that was kubelet.
So I mean, there's some in both. There's like that make IP tables util chain flag on kubelet that you can disable, but that also has some NAT implications. So that wasn't sufficient. Kubelet, from what I can tell, ensures the kube firewall chain, I think, is at the top, and then kubeproxy ensures that the kube forward chain is at the top. So it's a bit scattered across the two, but they both prepend certain chains to the top of the firewall.
So
Did that answer your question?
So this is Minhan speaking. So I believe kubeproxy and kubelet does prepend some rules, but I'm not sure which ones get prepended into the filter table. Most of them are in the NAT table, I believe. And for the filter table ones, the firewalls that you are referring to, are those like the in the service spec where you can specify the load balancer source ranges? Are those is that the firewall you're referring to, or some other firewall rules?
We have our own firewall rules that we're putting into IP tables in the input, output, forward chains. And I believe kubeproxy, at least specifically this kube forward chain, is aggressively put in front of ours, which has these like wide subnets of traffic that it's allowing.
Yeah, it does look like kubelet in kubelet network linux.go. It does create the kube firewall chain. It appends a rule for the like mark drop stuff, but then it prepends a couple of rules to jump from output and input chains to the kube firewall chain. So it does look like there's a kind of mix of append and prepend in at least kubelet, and also for the kube mark mask rules.
Yeah, so I think there's like 3 places in kubelet that do prepend. There's one in kubeproxy that does prepend, and there's like an IPVS proxy that does a prepend. I think like what we're proposing would mainly be like a toggle to switch those from prepend to append.
Is there a reason for the prepend? I mean, do we really?
The general reason, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, I think Bowie or anybody else, but the general reason for that had usually been that it's kind of a free-for-all, and everybody tries to prepend the rules to make sure that nobody else can overwrite them. And, you know, for example, to make sure that whatever rules Docker adds or something like that doesn't interfere with all the stuff that kubeproxy is doing or things like that. One of the ways that we fixed it for some things in OpenShift was we created an administrator-specific firewall chain that everything jumped to first. So that then you could add rules to that chain before it actually got sent along to the OpenShift stuff. But our use was a little less complicated than Kubernetes is.
So this is Tim. I'm open to all sorts of fixes here. I don't have any particular affinity to the way things are happening now. But I would like to make sure it's hard to talk about them in the abstract on a phone. I guess I'd rather see a patch, or at least like a gist or something that calls out the specific areas that are problematic. And maybe the right answer is to do something like what Dan just suggested, which is to provide explicit hooks so that if you're running in a Kubernetes node, you can rely on these hooks existing and being in the right places rather than sort of arm wrestling for who gets to be first.
Yeah, so we are trying to understand, there are two ways we could do this, I guess, and I'm not a developer, I do product management, so I'm just working with the customer who is having the trouble. So we could either go, and if there's no strong reason for prepending, we could just go change to append by default. That would be one option, which would solve the problem. If there are reasons for prepending, then we could propose a configurable knob that the customer can turn on because they're using Illumio and they don't want prepend. Which one would you guys suggest? Which route do we go?
I don't want to flag, and I'm wary of blanket turning all prepends into appends because I would have to sit and stare at this for a long time to figure out what the implications of that would be and what the possible things that could go wrong with that would be.
Okay.
I'm not 100%, but it's going to require a certain amount of inspection to figure out. Do you guys have bandwidth to think about and pursue a more hook-based option? We never designed these rules to really be extensible, but if we wanted them to be, then you guys could be the guinea pig for what the extensibility hooks should be.
Yeah, sure. I think we have bandwidth to get that done. If we can, if you can give the email, or we can do it offline as well. We are local in Sunnyvale here, so I'm not really sure. Not really sure who is talking on the other end. Sorry.
Sorry, this is Tim. I'd say the right thing to do would be to write a doc or maybe even a KEP. The KEP feels a little heavyweight for this, but maybe just write a doc that says this is what we're proposing in terms of extending the IP tables rules with hooks. The thing to think about is we'll want it to apply to both the IP tables and the IPVS proxiers because they both use IP tables for certain things, and so we want to make sure that they're equally capable here. And so if you write a doc, we can get the conversation going there and figure out the sort of lowest cost, lowest impact way of solving your problems.
Okay, sounds good.
Thank you so much.
So can I, if I have the doc ready, can I add it to the agenda for the next meeting?
Yes.
Yeah, I'd say also send an email to the SIG Network mailing list as well.
Okay.
If you have it ready before the next meeting, and then other people can look at it. I'm sort of looking at Dan Winship's and I think implemented some of this for OpenShift. So he'd have something to say about it too.
Yeah, I'm looking for a PR right now where we were discussing doing this before. Oh, it wasn't a PR, it was on the mailing list. I'll try to dig this up.
Okay, can someone forward that to me? So that would be great.
I think that Dan Winship might be able to forward to you, but he'll need your email address, so you might want to.
Are you on the SIG Network list? I can just restart the conversation there.
restart on the mailing list.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Sounds good. I'll restart the conversation on the mailing list. I'll go through it then. Okay, thanks.
Perfect. And with that, I think we are at the end of our agenda. So everybody can get 15 minutes back.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks, everyone. See you in 2 weeks.